Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Today, we're going to do a tribute to the late Walt Cunningham, who died about what was announced yesterday at age 90. He was, of course, an Apollo 7 lunar module pilot. They didn't fly a lunar module. That was the 10-day mission that shook down the new command module to go to the moon after the Apollo 1 fire. So Walt Cunningham, a very seminal creature, a pivotal creature, if you will. And we're going to celebrate his life today with images that you're going to maybe see for the first time from the late Paul Callie, who sketched this beautiful rendition in the Apollo 7 White Room. And we're going to hear that story from his son, who sent me notes about that, Chris Callie. So we're glad that you're all watching us today as we kick this off. Marty's not here. Connie's running our Streamlabs board. Is everything looking okay on the volume and everything, Connie?
Yes.
All right, good. So thank you, Connie, for pinch hitting for Marty today. She is a nervous wreck, but she's one of our ultra volunteers here, and she'll just do fine, Connie McDaniel. So we want to, but you're going to hear a lot about how this sketch originated, how Mr. Paul Callie got in the White Room for Apollo 7. And this is a story directly from his son, Chris, who, of course, is a artist of repute in his own. Both Callies have done over, I think, 50 U.S. postage stamps as well as their work. And Mr. Paul Callie, so renowned, noted for his Western art of trappers, fur trappers, people like that in the Wild West. Well, let's kick it off here with, there is Mr. Cunningham with his wife Dot about a dozen years ago at the one of the Space Fests that the Tom and Mark Usiak attended. Hello, Usiak brothers in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They're going to provide a lot of photos of Mr. Cunningham as we tell his story without too many pictures of him being an astronaut. Born in Creston, Iowa, a Marine. He graduated, though, from Venice High School in Los Angeles. So that farm town of Creston, Iowa quickly was in his rearview mirror when he was a young man and became a Marine, first a colonel in the Marines. And we're going to talk about his life here in a minute. There's a wonderful picture of him. He did a lot of public speaking. He hosted a radio talk show. Very amiable, affable guy, was very involved with promoting space. However, little asterism, he did not believe in the global warming situation was caused by humans. So, and he wasn't alone in that camp, but I think we're pretty well reversing some of that as we speak. But before we get carried on with Mr. Cunningham and his brilliant career for NASA, we do have a happy birthday today. A happy birthday of a very popular astronaut, particularly you ladies out there. Mr. John Chris Cassidy was born 53 years ago, January 4th, 1970, in Salem, Massachusetts, and grew up in York, Maine. There he is in the cupola, 3 space flights, including 2 long-duration flights, over 378 days in space. He is a Navy SEAL. He spent 10 years in the Navy SEAL program, and that knowledge came in very handy when he no doubt saved the life of Luca Palmetta there, the Italian astronaut, who, while they were on a spacewalk, in July 2013, Luca Parmitano helmet started filling up with water. They've got kind of an air dam around their neck, and it was filling up with water, and he couldn't grab the air dam and go like this in the space helmet. A serious situation developed as Luca could have drowned inside his helmet. Cassidy, a Navy SEAL, got him safely in the EVA hatch, and here they are as buds there for sure. 10 spacewalks by Chris Cassidy ties him for the second most with 3 other NASA astronauts. The record is 16 by Solovyev of the Russian Space Agency. Palmetto's flights in July 2009 on STS-127. Then he flew a Soyuz to space and was commander of Expedition 62. So, and on that one of those of his 10 EVAs, he took in 2013. I think 9 years ago, 2013, the selfie craze was just coming on board, and he took this selfie of himself on an EVA that was one of the top 10 selfies of 2013. Wish Chris Cassidy a happy 53rd birthday. And seeing Cassidy there in space is a good segue to Cunningham, the only picture I loaded up of him in a spacesuit, looking at the glove there as they suited up for Apollo 7. And you're going to hear a backstory about this with our artist we're featuring today, Mr. Paul Calley, the words from his son Chris. All right. And so I want to make sure I grab those notes on that. Where did I put those notes? There I did. There I did. Got those notes right there, Chris Calley, that you sent me. Thank you very much. Well, a little bit about Ronnie Walter Cunningham was his full name. His first name was Ronnie, and R. Walter Cunningham, and he signed things that way. He was the third civilian astronaut after Neil Armstrong and Elliot C. Marty questioned when I said he was the second civilian astronaut. Elliot C., who passed away in a jet crash, would have been the commander of Gemini 9. And anyway, he didn't fly, so technically Cunningham is the second civilian astronaut to go to space behind Neil Armstrong. But there's an astronaut, they were both in the military organizations, but they weren't active when they flew. Cunningham became an astronaut in 1963, the third group of astronauts. There was one of his first pictures taken. And I want to tell you something, folks. This man had the best flat top haircut of any astronaut out there. You can land an aircraft carrier on that thing. Gus Grissom had a pretty good one, too, that he rocked from time to time. But there is Cunningham Usiak brothers, Tom and Mark, watching us. Mark has supplied some of the photos we're going to see in a minute. Holding a beautiful Hasselblad camera, the kind that they took to the moon and took pictures on Apollo 7 during that 10-day orbital flight. And here is the crew of that flight. Before I get too far away, well, I'll talk about that in a minute here. There is the Apollo 7 crew that were one and done, except Wally Schirra. This was his third spacecraft. He was a Mercury astronaut, and then he was on Gemini. The rendezvous with Gemini 7. He was on Gemini 6 with Tom Stafford. And then he was a commander of this mission. And then there is Walt and his flat top on the right there. Look at, if this is the spaceship that they flew to space, you're going to see a picture of it here in just a minute. I think we are. Did I insert that wrong? Oh, doggone it. I think I put it in after there, where we saw Charlie Mars there just a second. This crew, Isley on the left, died in the 1980s of cancer. Wally Schirra died about 2013, I think. A few years ago, he lived into his 80s. He became the right-hand man of Walter Cronkite during the Apollo broadcast of the lunar landing and shed a tear when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. But because of his irascibility and a little bit of bucking the system, Chris Kraft, the Manned Space Operations Center in Houston, grounded them all. Although Wally was going to be retired after this mission, Isley and Cunningham never flew again. And we're going to hear in a minute one man's opinion about that. But they famously did a first live TV from space, orbiting the Earth. Keep those cards and letters coming in, folks, was one of the cards. And that's Isley and Wally Schirra there. And it's hard to find a picture of Walt Cunningham, but I may have without his face showing it, and we'll see that at the end of the program. 10-day mission. They got head colds and they got a little bit snippy. Wally Schirra did. And here is our godfather of the museum, Mr. Charlie Mars, just like the planet. Charlie had some very important management jobs in the NASA, his NASA career. And as I talked to Charlie today, if he had any Walt Cunningham stories, he says, well, he was project manager for Apollo, in that they tested in the atmospheric chamber about twice as many times this command module. They wanted to make sure it was right. Instead of 2 all-out tests, they did 4. And on that last one, he said Wally was really what Mars called nasty Wally. He was snipping at everybody, and he just was very cussing and critical of everything, and why are we doing this test? We've done this before type of stuff. So when he went to space, he kind of already had an attitude. And that attitude led itself to be the other 2 astronauts being grounded, according to Charlie Mars's recollection of history back then and his knowledge of the NASA machine. But good to relive some memories with Charlie. Here is the Apollo 7 command module at the Frontier of Space Museum in Love Field out in Dallas, Texas, that I've been privileged to have been at. And all of you that have seen a lot of these spacecraft memorabilia, all right, what is unusual about this one is right there is the stair steps and the rail that you can look inside the plexiglass inside the seats there. But wait a minute, you all say, yeah, you can put your hands on that hatch. All right. In fact, I looked at the docent saying, can I touch it? And he said, I don't care what you do with it. It's open there. You can. So it was pretty cool to put your hands on the same pull levers and stuff like that those astronauts had. And the reason why that is in Love Field is a lot to do with Cunningham's wife, I was told by the docent. It was in a museum, I believe, in Toronto, Canada. And they actually had a light on one of the windows on the left side, the other side, that was so close and hot to show the inside that it melted some of the plastic over the time that it was there. So they didn't like that. And I understand that Cunningham's wife was very responsible for this being in Dallas, Texas. She must have some Dallas roots there. But boy, this is a cool machine to see so up close, and you stick your head in that plastic there where the hatch is. But there is the hatch. And of course, all of us that have followed the space program know that the hatch is what the inability to get to hatch within seconds away from the vehicle during the Apollo 1 fire is what killed those astronauts. And this hatch can be ejected and opened up, I believe, in a matter of 7 or 8 seconds. So space history there, and to touch it was one of the thrills of my geekiness of finding spacecraft around American museums. And this is a great museum, all right. The Frontiers of Space Museum there, they've got a lot of stuff from the airline industry that was based there. I think it was Boeing. I could be wrong. Don't hold me to that. But Love Field, also famous for where President Kennedy's airplane was when he was assassinated, Air Force One. Well, let's move on with more Walt Cunningham stories. And oh my gosh, who is that handsome guy there with Walt Cunningham? That is Mr. Chris Calley, who's become a great friend of our museum. Hi, Chris. And I've got his story that he sent me of his father, who is Paul Calley, one of the first 8 artists chosen by the James Webb to do their art thing at the Space Center in 1963 is when Gordon Cooper's last Mercury mission was. Webb chose 8 artists, and one of them was Mr. Paul Calley. And there he is there's Chris, his son. Paul passed away about 12 years ago, I believe, and his memory lives on here at our Space Museum as much as we can promote their artwork. What a great smile and a great guy. I wish I could have met him, Walt Cunningham. There he is with Chris. And here's Chris's story. He says, my father was the only artist present during the suiting up for Apollo 7. NASA Fine Art Program art director Jim Dean and Deke Slayton had discussed having an artist in the suiting up room for Apollo 7, sort of as a test to see if it would work, because Deke was planning to have an artist in the breakfast and suiting up for Apollo 11, which he did. Deke was very aware of my father's work, and they had been friends for years. And I'm going to start showing some of these pictures that shared out of his dad's notebook. Okay, thank you, Chris, for doing this. Deke was very aware of my father's work, and they had been friends for a few years, and I'm not sure whether Deke mentioned to Jim or Jim mentioned to Deke that my father would be a logical choice. This first picture there is Wally seated there. And then we go to Don Isley, sketches on the fly while the techs are putting them in at the orbiting and checkout, or ONC, the office and checkout building. I think ONC is what that means. I'll be corrected to that real quick. Anyway, the idea was to see if an artist could basically be a fly on the wall, not get in the way of the suiting up procedures. And there is Cunningham. Obviously, my father did a great job, Chris Callie says, because, as you know, Deke asked my father to be the only artist documenting the Apollo 11 crew during the breakfast and suiting up. Also, as you know, the breakfast scene was recreated in the movie First Man, which I recommend everybody. Damon Chazelle was the director of that Neil Armstrong book-based movie First Man. And guess who played his dad in that breakfast scene of sketching? That's right, Chris Callie played his father, Paul, in the movie. And I need to frame grab that to have some fun with that one day with you, Chris. But what a story. Look at how his father completed those sketches one after another, brought right in to the picture that we're showing behind here that is part of the great Paul Callie's artwork of our Apollo program. And there I'm going forward, backwards. So thank you, Chris, for sharing that personal story and your dad's artwork right out of his book. Well, here is, again, Cunningham in later years shaking the hand of Bruce Melnick there. Hey, Bruce. Bruce is the astronaut chief, so to speak, out at the Space Center. And he recruits all the other astronauts that are wrangled up by Nick Thomas to give their wonderful talks out there. A full day. You have no excuse of not seeing astronauts on the Space Coast. Go get a season ticket for $150 and go out to the Space Center, and they have one every day out there. But this was at Space Fest. One of the books that is well touted in the astronaut world is The All-American Boys by Walt Cunningham. He wrote that in 1977, I believe. And he also, 1977. A reminiscence of his astronaut days, kind of a little bit of a tell-all and a how-to become an astronaut. Walt was a major contributor and forward writer for the 2007 space history book, In the Shadow of the Moon. And in 2018, he joined the Back to Space organization as an astronaut consultant with the goal of inspiring the next generation to go to Mars. He became a Harvard Business School 6-week management program. He made major investments, made a pretty good dollar out there around on property and so forth around the Houston area. Unfortunately, I remember a story of his storage unit being broken into about 2 years ago when we just started doing Stay Curious. We did a story where he had a storage unit broken into, and a lot of some of his valuable stuff was made off with. So and I don't know how that ever worked out. Cunningham went on to head the Skylab branch of the astronaut office and left NASA in 1971. And the crew of that 7-day mission, no doubt, they didn't do any insubordination. Wally Schirra was the one that kind of had the sour grapes, and but their main accomplishment was, oh my God, they shook down the vehicle. They they knew it was a safe vehicle. 10 days orbiting. All they needed was 3 days to the moon, 3 days back, 1 day orbiting. So they needed 7 days for the command module to work right. They got 10 out of it. So that was a big check off for and then 7. And then 8 did go to the moon. They took the 3 days there, 3 days back and around without the lunar module. So you can't underestimate how important Apollo 7 was. Walt Cunningham, though there wasn't a lunar module on there, he was responsible with all the command module systems except the rendezvous. Well, they didn't have any rendezvous stuff on there. The navigation stuff was left to Don Isley. So anyway, we're going to look at some Mark Usiak photographs just to reminisce a little bit about these astronaut guys. Space Fest 3 was in Tucson in 2011. I know many of you went out to that. What did we count, Connie? 18 or 19 astronauts? Was it 19 in this picture? As I say hi to Connie McDaniel, who's doing an excellent job running our Streamlabs board today. Connie, we got anybody watching today? You just say yes. She's not going to get on the USIAC microphone.
Yes.
Yet, but thank you, Connie. Tom Celentano, thank you for watching. Neil 1030's watching. Doug Forrest, I know you're looking at those sketches of the great Paul Cally with interest. Dave Stange, Cynthia Rossi, our usuals out there. Larry Gamble, good to see you pop up. George Giorgio, as you all are wondering there, how many can you identify in that group? I see on the far left there, who's still alive, Charlie Duke. I know that in the back row there is David Scott still alive. Buzz, Buzz has got to be wearing something crazy. Yep, he's there. Oh, no, he's not. Who's in the shirt? Who's that?
Looks like Al Warden, but I'm not sure.
Okay, Uncle Al there. He's passed away. Gene Cernan's there. I'll add up one day. We'll go over that picture maybe and do a story. I know USIAC took that. Mark. We've got Kaylee Alexis is watching. Thank you, Kaylee. Tracy Canapin. Ophelia Sauterelle. How's your evening going in France, young lady? Mariano Carta is watching. And of course, Chris Cally is watching. Thank you again, Chris, for enhancing Stay Curious today with your insight through your father of Mr. Walt Cunningham. There he is, glad-handed, talking to people. That's Nicole Stott behind her there in her spacesuit project. Nikki will be our speaker for our remembrance of the Columbia, Challenger, and Apollo 1 astronauts on January 29th. A Sunday. So we look forward to Nicole Stott doing the honors that day. And there is signing away some autographs there. And I love this picture, Mark Usiak, because it shows the buyer there. Look at his big fat wallet there. And to the right, I was telling Connie of Cunningham, the Usiak brothers have told me that there's an accountant, an assistant there with an adding machine to add up, because a lot of these people during these space fests that apparently are going to be suspended, unfortunately, done by the Poor family. Kip Poor, a great artist, has passed away. His wife and daughter have found it too much to continue the tradition. We hope to honor them someday at our shuttle fest here that we'll have in April on the East Coast here at the Space Coast. But I digress as I'm saying, Walt may have walked away with $25,000, $30,000 check that weekend, as all of the Apollo astronauts you saw here. Look at them all. All right, they showed up because there's money in them there mountains. There's gold in them there hills in the form of space geeks coming particularly from Europe to get things signed. And it was Tom Usiak told me he watched this, and it was easy for one of these guys like this gentleman to write a check or fold out some folding money in the order of $2,500 or more for their autographs. Because some of these autographs went for $400 each, the Moonwalkers, okay? I'm not sure what Cunningham commanded at that time. So good times to look back and remember Mr. Walt Cunningham, and 90 years old. What a great life. and what a good man. And we'll end the show here with another look back at Apollo 7. As quickly, I'd been remiss if I didn't mention Mars, the big red star in the east. There's another one to the right of it. That's the eye of the bull of Taurus. Mars is right near the Pleiades star cluster. You'll see that when the moon gets out of the way, because it's been beside Mars the last 2 nights. Full moon is Friday, by the way, called the wolf moon, as those wolves were baying because they were hungry. But on this date, January 4th, 2004, 18 years ago, this spacecraft, Mars Exploration Rover, landed. Spirit landed on Mars on this date, 18 years ago. It landed in an airbag that you see the bags are deflated as its platform that it landed on become known as, I think, the Sagan Memorial Station after Carl Sagan. And here is a artist rendition of Spirit roaming the 7 years it did on the surface of Mars. Of course, it had solar panels. It was guaranteed to last 90 days because they knew the solar panels would be covered with that fine red Mars dust. And instead, little dust devils kept those panels cleaned off once in a while. Something that was weird that happened. And they named these hills nearby the Spirit rover the Columbia Hills after the fallen heroes of the Columbia tragedy. And many accomplishments by Mars we'll talk about later. I just wanted to let y'all know that as you look up at that red planet up there, yes, we remembered the Columbia astronauts by name on a disc that you sent your name to Mars on. I know mine's on there. Connie, is yours on there? Did you send your name to Mars 12 years ago? You think so? Yep, she's smiling. Yes, she did. So it's great that we honor our heroes even on the red planet Mars. Someday someone's going to walk up and take a selfie beside that, I guarantee you. Might not be in my lifetime, but hope it is. And there are the hills. These places on Mars have become real places in our minds now. It looks like the southwest deserts of America out there. And as the sun sets on yet another Stay Curious program, all right, this is the sun setting on Mars from the Spirit rover. It lasted about 7 years, well beyond its planned lifetime, all right. In fact, 21 times. Last time we heard from it was in May 2009. It became stuck in sand. And first stop, then about a year later, communications stopped. So Spirit rover launched this day, and today we've got 3 rovers on the surface of Mars, 2 NASA and 1 Chinese. So as the sun sets on Mars, this is Walt Cunningham holding up his Apollo 7 orbiting space transmission card, and as the sun sinks slowly in the west, we say goodbye to you on Stay Curious, remembering the crew of Apollo 7. They're all gone now. Don Isley on the left, Wally Schirra, the only American to fly in 3 of its Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo spacecraft, and of course, Walt Cunningham. Rest in peace, all 3 of you guys. When's the last time we'll be celebrating Apollo 7 and these gentlemen just on the anniversary in October when it orbited the Earth? Because they're all gone now, but they live on. So God bless the Cunningham family. As I say thank you to all of you for watching Stay Curious today. Again, a special thanks to Chris Calley sharing his father's tremendous artwork right here behind me. Thank you, Connie, for a smooth Streamlabs presentation as you're getting ready to take us out, Connie. And until tomorrow, when we do another Stay Curious program, I'm Mark Marquez saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.